Thank you for showing up, and thank you in advance for offering your opinions, your objections, your questions, your thoughts, things that you're just wondering about. That's what we're here for. I'm going to give basically a short 4-minute presentation, which probably should take about 15 minutes, and at least according to the way it's been in the past, and then it would just open it up for questions. Okay, and I am John Mann. I live in Alstead. I represent Marlow, Surrey, and Alstead, and I'm chairman of a committee looking into the Maplewood question. How we got here, there's a slide set that I am basically going to follow. There were some in the back, so there's a couple of pages here with some numbers. And if you don't have one, when we get to numbers, you can raise your hand. I have a few here. I'll just hand them back to you. Anyway, first of all, Maplewood seems to have a very good reputation, and staff being very, very important in terms of how nursing homes are run. That's a credit to the staff, seriously. The only issue... Thank you. The whole issue about Maplewood, and that's been discussed since, I don't know, 2008 or so, started with physical problems with the building. And when you start getting serious physical problems, and there's a sample of rotted plumbing pipe there, then you start looking, what else do we need to do?
Go ahead, Ben.
And the basic, the deficiencies, so you've got the repair problem. Well, by the way, the maintenance person seems to be able to handle that, but so it isn't like it's going to collapse. But there are other deficiencies, like there's lack of air conditioning. The electrical system isn't strong enough to support the full load that a modern nursing home would need. So that just brought up the idea, what should we do? And a task force was appointed in 2014. They came back with a recommendation for a very new concept, totally different from the Maplewood structure, called a greenhouse, and we'll talk about that more in a couple of minutes. At the same time, nursing home standards, and greenhouse being part of that, are in flux. People want to treat people very well. They want to be treating people with dementia well and finding ways to communicate with them and so on. So, but the greenhouse issue was like, this is the way we should go, and there are a lot of other possibilities, so we got appointed to look at the question more broadly and look at lots of possibilities. Now, I need to say first, the county does have an obligation to take care of the poor elderly. And that's, I guess, in the Constitution, in the way we run ourselves as a state. And Medicaid helps, but it doesn't pay the whole bill, and the rest of it's paid by the taxpayer. Nursing home care is quite expensive. And the federal government, because of Medicaid, is interested in the costs. And so there's a trend now to be careful about putting people in a nursing home when they could be taken care of at home or could be taken care of through assisted living, which are much less expensive, at least assisted living seems to be. So that's a trend that's happening. Now, one of the results of that, in addition to saving money, is that the nursing homes may actually have a more seriously impaired resident, typically, because they won't be there until they cannot exist in assisted living. So there's a slide that says Maplewood resident population, and it shows a very impaired resident. They need some assistance, bathing, dressing, going to the bathroom, feeding themselves, so on. Altered mental status, well, I don't think that's anything unusual, at least. And there's always a few that are there for rehab. So we did a lot of studies. We visited 2 greenhouses, one in New York State and one in Massachusetts, that are both greenhouses but quite different from each other. We talked to the staff. The staff gives us tremendous amounts of help in terms of understanding the relationship between the building and the staff and the way the people are taken care of and the residents, their conditions. And we also visited 2 very modern nursing homes in New Hampshire, one in Boscawen, which is just north of Concord, Merrimack County, and one in Ossipee, which is up Carroll County. It's north of Winnipesaukee. And both very interesting. So doing a lot of reading, having visited all those, we came up with some alternatives. One, by the way, was recommended by one of the private citizens that came to our committee meetings. And I'm going to just run through these alternatives. One of them, obviously, is we could outsource it. We could simply pay private industry to do it. I won't make any comment about that. I don't think we'll do that. Another approach, which is what we're really doing now, is coping. In other words, when repairs are necessary, you do them. And that's fine as long as you can do them. So that's another alternative, and it definitely is an alternative. Those are both Westmoreland, Maplewood options. And the third option in Maplewood that was proposed by a private citizen was to put add a wing to the facility. The geography of the Maplewood Hill that the facility is on wouldn't allow building a sizable, sprawling nursing home on the same site, but a wing could be added, and you could move half the residents into the wing when it's done, and then you've got you've got 2 other stages to renovate the rest of the building. The reason for the idea of renovating and building new is that if you do any kind of substantial renovations, you run into Americans with Disabilities Act, which means you have to have wheelchair accessible bathrooms and larger entrances and so on. So now you're tearing the whole building apart. So that's why we're talking a lot about building. Although coping or outsourcing are still possibilities. So these are the 3 for Westmoreland. The greenhouse came about, well, actually, if you've read Atul Gawande's book, Being Mortal, he discusses that in maybe 20 or 30 pages or something of that book. And the idea is to get staff and residents, I'm oversimplifying, close together so they live together, and staff has better knowledge of the resident. You know, if you have somebody giving medications to 50 people and someone's groaning, they don't know what's wrong with the person. They don't know the person. They're just going around, they'd have to dispense pills up and down the corridor. If the person is taking care of 15 or 20 people, it's much easier to understand, to get to know the person, to understand what they're reacting to, what their problems are, and so on. So that's the idea. This one, the third from the end, the greenhouse is in the middle. So the next one is very much like Carroll County. It puts everything under one roof. So it isn't quite so strict about isolating staff. This staff is going to be with these residents. And there's flexibility in terms of how you operate it and so on. But you do have them in communities. We call it a neighborhood design, so that there is connection between staff and residents in units. The next to last one there is called traditional. It's really taking the Carroll County concept of a building, but not being quite so modern, I guess, in terms of implementation. The greenhouse idea and the Carroll County idea are really single rooms and single bathrooms. Carroll County has a track overhead. You can be lifted out of your bed, moved on a track and dropped into a wheelchair, is what it's called, or taken to the bathroom and given a bath all in the same place. And that's a little expensive, so I think it's a balance what people want to do. So anyway, the traditional is a little less oriented toward the greenhouse. It's a little further away. Finally, we added something called hybrid, because we don't know what greenhouses are going to be like, and we don't know what populations there will be. And you know, a greenhouse or two added to a traditional nursing home might be a way to expand it. So, you know, we're just leaving ourselves room to be as flexible as possible. So that is most of what we're going to talk about. Now, there is a page that says numbers summary, and I want to explain it. This is not a spreadsheet that comes up with a total. These are separate lines. The option of renovating Maplewood in place and reducing population to 120 is called A1. The new wing is called A2, and then B1, B2, B3, B4 are the 4 options for going elsewhere. And so the first thing we have is number of beds. It's 150, except for just what we have now, except for the if we stay in Maplewood and don't do anything except expand the rooms. The funds, there are sources of funds which are complicated. There's there's a new market tax credit that's available for certain tracts, you know, certain towns and areas of towns where it might actually save a significant amount of money, for 3, 4, 5 million, somewhere in that area overall. There's a line that says operating loss, and that needs explanation. There's staffing requirements that differ depending on the geography and how these things the buildings are set up. And some of them will actually cost more than the current staffing levels. So in the case of the greenhouse, there isn't an increase in the number of people, but they need higher pay. And so the operating loss is just the staff implications, as I understand it. Finally, the tax is, the next to last line says what the tax will be on your house if it's a $160,000 assessment. And the bottom line is just subtracting out what the $51.75 current tax in the current Maplewood, so that it tells you what the increment in taxes would be for each one of these alternatives. There are a few considerations we have to think about. First of all, assisted living could be thought of as an opportunity. If that's one thing, we haven't really delved into that much in our committee. There's going to be ongoing maintenance of Maplewood if we stay there. There are some big ticket items that are looming, and they're not made right there right now, but they're going to happen. That will be a cost we'll get to. If we move away from Maplewood, we have to figure out what to do with it. If we can find somebody that wants the building, that would be good. If we cannot, we pay $350,000 a year estimated to maintain it and mothball it until something happens. Either we find somebody that does want the building, or we decide we have to destroy it. So that's it. And I think we've covered everything. So I will answer any questions you have about the details of these. But we're also very interested in all kinds of issues. Where should it be? What makes sense? Anything at all. It's a wide open meeting, and it's up to you to provide that content. Thank you.
Let's just sit over here, John. Hi, my name's Dan Eaton. I'm your moderator for tonight. I'm also the chair of the delegation. And as we go forward, and if I can get my phone to stop yakking at me, if you have a question, a comment, a statement, your opinion, please raise your hand. When you're recognized, stand up, state your name and what town you're from. I would ask those folks who have already been to other meetings in other towns to, at the outset, sit on your hands and let everybody else have a first try. The folks that will be helping you tonight, I will do what I can. To my left, you've already met John Mann. Cheryl Trombley, the finance director for the county, raise your hand. Catherine Kindup, the county home administrator. Everybody says how wonderful the care is and how loving they are. The ground floor starts at the top. by the example. She set an example comparable to none. Chris Coates, our county administrator, Jane Johnson, our scribe. And John hit one point, and we probably ought to go into a little more detail, and that's assisted living. We have assisted living at the Maplewood facility, and it currently has 20 apartments, can accommodate 40 people, but it has 20. It's something that the county actually started. When we developed that, there was no comparable item available in the private sector. So, sort of our invention. There is assisted living within the private sector in the county now. Since the committee started its work, a wrinkle came up, and that is that CMS, the Center for Medicaid Services, has come out with a new ruling that says you cannot have assisted living on the same campus as a nursing home. No one yet has been able to give an answer or even tell us who the genius was that came up with that wonderful idea. It literally makes no sense whatsoever, since patients are laterally transferable any given day from one to the other and have to meet the same criteria for either. So we don't understand what that's about. It takes effect in 2019, the regulation. We have applied for a waiver with CMS. The state has applied for a waiver with CMS. We have no idea how that's going to play out. If we stay in Maplewood, that will be in Westmoreland. That will be an issue we have to deal with. Whether we get a waiver, whether it's a permanent waiver, whether it's a temporary waiver, 5 years, 10 years. If we move to Keene, do we try to accommodate assisted living by building an additional thing? That's not in the plans at the moment. It hasn't even been discussed. And then do you try to cheat the system by putting an assisted living facility on the same property but subdivide it and change the address to skirt the system? We don't know. So that's an area that is up for discussion, but no way to figure it out yet. With that, welcoming your questions, your comments, your opinions, anything that you have. And way in the back with the glasses on your head.
I spoke at the last one, but I have a softball game at 7:30.
You have dispensation because it's a Maplewood team.
It is, it's Maplewood softball team. And I'm the pitcher, so I have to.
Very important.
So my name is Wendy Putnam, I live in Westmoreland, and I am also, I have been a County of Cheshire employee for, as of August 26, 30 years. And as I stated at the last time, we have seen a lot of good things over the last 30 years, and I've seen a lot, some not so good things. Me personally, I am not in favor of moving to Keene and doing the greenhouse effect. I know some comments have been made about it being a closer-knit community where residents get to know each other better, and then having a common community room where we will be bringing residents out of the pods to this common community room. I personally have an issue with that because during winter, are we going to be bundling up our 15 residents in a pod, bringing them outside to the community room? Are we going to be bringing them outside during the rain? So we're putting residents at risks for getting colds and flus by coming and going in between the buildings. And we're also putting our staff at risk for coming down with colds. Right now, currently, we have activities on all 3 floors in our day room, and then we have our common room down on the first floor where we have big activity, music programs, etc. going on. We have multiple music programs going on throughout the week that the activity staff put on. What's going to happen, and that's all year long. So in the winter months, and we just bring our residents from another floor down to the community room and they attend it. I feel that if we go to the greenhouse in this community room during the winter months, we may see our number of activities programs decrease because we're not going to be bringing our residents outside to go across the yard to the community room. One question that I thought of since the Westmoreland meeting is, I know to mothball the current nursing home, you said it was going to be $350,000 a year. And then I think you said it was going to be between $60,000 to $80,000 a year for the Keene sewer and water. My question on that is, what's the capacity of the current City of Keene's water and sewer treatment plant? What's the projected forecast of that being upgraded? If it is going to be needed to be upgraded, with us building and adding on, is that going to have an impact to this? And what's the cost of that going to be, which the taxpayers of the City of Keene are going to incur? Also, if we move to Keene, I'd be curious to know what the county's currently paying in property taxes to the City of Keene on the physical land. We can't pay the taxes, if I am correct, on the physical footprint of the buildings, but we do pay taxes on the land. So what would the tax decrease be for the City of Keene if these buildings went in, and what would the decrease to the City of Keene get for those buildings? Another question is, we have our Alzheimer's unit and our behavior locked unit on the 3rd floor. I'd be curious to see how we're going to handle that in the pod units, and how we're going to keep those residents safe within a pod unit. I don't know what the staffing ratio is going to be in each pod, how many RNs, how many LPNs, how many LNAs. From what I understand, those staff members are then going to be responsible for cooking, cleaning, and doing laundry. And is it going to be all staff, or is it only going to be the LNAs? Is it going to be the LPNs? Is it going to be the RNs? Who's going to be responsible for doing all of that? Is a question that I have. As it got brought up in the Westmoreland meeting, a lot of citizens were concerned about Maplewood moving out of Westmoreland and leaving another eyesore within the town, as they did with the jail. So what's going to happen with the nursing home? We currently have the jail that's sitting there abandoned with no electricity or heat. Since the county farm has closed, the looks of that facility has gone downhill. And then the house, one of the old farmhouses on the hill, has been sitting empty for a while, and that's going on the wayside. So if we move the nursing home out, what's that building going to look like? As far as moving to Keene, if we build at the jail area, I don't think it's fair for our elderly individuals who have served and protected our country, where currently they can look out their window and they can see the trees, they can see the birds, they can see over into Vermont, and they can see the Connecticut River. Is one of their views now going to be county jail? And citizens that have served and protected our country, I don't really think that that's fair for them. As far as the comment that the first presenter made in regards to these smaller units and the nursing getting to know their residents and not knowing the 50 residents that they're taking care of now, I know my 50 residents on my floor. I know them very well. If you ask me what is wrong with them, I'm able to tell you what is wrong with them. I'm able to tell you what their diagnoses are. So we as nurses on the floor, we know our 50 residents. And there is a very real connection between the staff, the nurses, and our 50 residents on the floor. In regards to keeping it in Westmoreland, again, as I stated in the Westmoreland meeting, we are surrounded by the beauty of the country. As I said, the trees, the silence, and currently the building as it is, with all of the departments intermingled, PT, OT, speech, activities, housekeeping, laundry, dietary, administration staff, social services, we all have a very well working relationship amongst each other. I think building the pod, I don't know as far as like those departments, are they going to now be in their own pod? And we are now losing that good communication, interconnection that we have with all of those staff members now. By just seeing each other walking down the hallway, you see, saying, good morning, Pat, and whatever. We're going to lose that connection that we have right now with the staff by going to the pods. Staff travel from all over the county to come to Westmoreland to work at Maplewood. We have staff that come from Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Vermont. Having it more central, I don't think should be considered a factor into relocating it to Keene. We have had many staff members leave Maplewood to go to work at other facilities that are closer for them for commuting, and they have left those jobs to come back to Maplewood because of the staff and the good relationship and the working conditions that we have at Maplewood. I've only been a nurse since 2008. Off the top of my head, on my floor personally, I've only known 2 residents that have left our facility to go, 1 to Keene or 2 to Brattleboro to be closer to their family members. The loved ones come to Westmoreland to visit their family members. They have chosen to put them in Westmoreland at Maplewood. If they didn't want them out there that far, then they would choose another facility closer to for their community. There was a recent letter to the editor from a resident in Westmoreland saying that if you add a wing and remodel the existing building, make a few of those rooms dedicated to respite, this would be a good income for the county. I think that should be an option that the county look into if they do remodel, having some rooms reserved for respite care. We have gotten respite patients in at Maplewood for a week. Yes, it's a lot of work for us nurses to admit somebody, but it's given a family member and a loved one out in the community a chance to just rest, relax, and recover and know that their loved one is being taken care of. And then the last comment I have is, I'm going to get my reading glasses on, old age. I guess that's it. Those are my thoughts, my concerns. As far as going to a pod unit, if the county ever moved, I don't know how you'd stay employed in Cheshire County. I don't want anybody to take offense to this, and if you do, I'm going to apologize up front. But I did not spend $30,000 within the last 8 years to become a registered nurse to cook, clean, and do laundry. I do that at home. And I think if you're going to be having us nurses doing those duties, you are now taking our skills away from caring for those residents and keeping a good eye on them. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy, and go kick it a little bit for the county. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Greg Johnson. I have to look up my sheet to see where I was born. I was born in Keene. I live in Swansea. I lived in Swansea, I don't know, probably 40 some odd years. 45, I think, to be exact. So my background is I'm a licensed certified general contractor, a Class A license, so it means I can construct or be involved in construction of any type of construction. I'm also a licensed property inspector, where I can work for insurance companies. I can work for anyone that needs an inspection done on a piece of property. I'm also a licensed commercial investment broker in multiple states, including New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Florida. After hearing all the different stories about the condition of the property up in Westmoreland, I took it a little bit personally, because back in the 70s, I was the project manager for the original nursing home that was built in the 70s, overseeing the electrical installation, fire alarm systems, security systems, nurses' call systems, and so forth. We took a lot of pride when that building was built back in the 70s. It was a state-of-the-art. It was built like a fortress. I can remember multiple meetings that we had. Most of the contractors, if I remember correctly, all of the contractors are from the Keene area, Baker Construction, Strongman, Melanson, and ourselves. Our family company at the time was Johnson Electric. So I, along with a few other people, about a year ago, we asked to have a tour of the property because, again, I personally wanted to, for my own personal curiosity, I wanted to see it. And thanks to the county home administrator and your facilities director, they arranged a tour, which took pretty much probably 4 or 5 hours. We toured every part of the building, from the boiler room to the kitchen, the laundry room to whatever. And yeah, I mean, it's a building that's been there for 40 some odd years, but I can tell you that the structure, well, I'm talking about the 70s building now. I'm not talking about the building that was built in the 90s, which unfortunately a lot of the media reports that this is it's the whole facility, which is not correct. It's just the 70s portion, I think, is what we're talking about. By the way, I remember sitting in multiple meetings back in the 70s when, like a lot of large construction projects, the prices came in over budget. And there's always these meetings with the building committees and other people to cut here and cut there and so forth. And if I remember correctly, it was voted back then that we would not put in the air conditioning system, but the building was, the building was built to accommodate air conditioning in the future, if in fact it ever wanted to be put in. If anyone goes up there and you walk in down any hallway, you go above the ceiling, you can poke up a ceiling tile, and you can see 4 or 5, maybe some 6 feet of clearance, which is where your trunk lines and all your duct work would go down the hallways, and then your different lines would go into the individual rooms and so forth. So the building can accommodate air conditioning. There's no question about that. One of the things that I did notice when I walked through the building was the lack of maintenance over the years. You have a fantastic facilities guy up there right now. Fortunately, he's only been there a short period of time, but whoever was your facilities person before didn't do their job, and I'm just saying it as bluntly as I can. And you can tell by walking through a building. I give a ton of credit to the Keene School District and how they keep their buildings, Keene State College, and other facilities. In commercial real estate, I'm in and out of these buildings all the time, and I can see them, I can tell, how they're cared for. So that's basically, I don't want to take up a lot of time, but the maintenance, is a big item. It's a real big item. The other thing that I'm very sensitive to is the location of where the current nursing home is. I mean, we're so lucky in this county to own such a wonderful piece of the planet, is the way I look at it. I mean, it is phenomenal. When I was up there in May a year ago, it happened to be a warm day, it was in the 80s, and the people were sitting out on the veranda, on the patio, whatever you call it, with phenomenal views. The spring flowers are budding, the trees were budding, the people were sitting there with smiles on their faces. That hit home to me because I had a mom up there, and I know how much that means. The other thing that I wanted to throw this out for what it's worth is, moving this facility to Keene. One of the big things I kept hearing over and over and over and over was, well, new market tax credits, new market tax credits. Well, I think I heard on the radio this morning someone telling me that, the whole savings on new market tax credits, no matter which way we go, is going to be somewhere around $3 million. Did I hear that correctly? Okay. The site, I'm just throwing this out for example. The site that the initial folks chose, which is down in 101, it's going to cost you far more than $3 million. for your site work. Dan, you're a real estate guy. You can look it up on the property disclosure and just see what the owner of the property disclosed. It's on that site. Okay? Not to mention that the topography of that site from the bottom to the top is 260 square feet. And it's crisscrossed with utility lines and so forth. But, okay, that's just one site. I'm sure there are many other sites that would be looked at if the facility was to be moved out of Westmoreland. But keep that in mind, $3 million is not much money when you're starting to do site work and making, and by the way, that's public record if anyone wants to look it up. It's on, I suppose you can go on my website, you can go on realtor.com, you can go on to any of those. I touched on the you know, to leave it in Westmoreland, do the new wing. Once the new wing is built, you take the people out of the existing wing, you put them in the new wing, and you warehouse the existing wing, you mothball it, whatever you want to call it. And as our future, we are a graying state. I think we're number 7 in the country, and the graying population. So as we do gray or whatever, we have something in the pipeline that you know, we can renovate in the future. And so to me, it's a no-brainer. I mean, all these wonderful drawings and all this money that we've spent for these different consultants, it's all wonderful, but common sense. You put on a wing that's on the existing facility that's there, the infrastructure is in place. To me, it's a no-brainer. And in closing, I want to share with you what I think to be one of the most important things, and that is, what are you going to do with the building if you move it out of Westmoreland? And you know, I've been hearing these stories about, oh, we got this person looking at it and that person looking at it, and you know, we got this plan and that plan. Unless you have a sizable, non-refundable deposit, we shouldn't even be talking about this. Because if that building is vacated, I can tell you right now, it's going to turn into another jail. It's going to turn into another Latches Theater. It's going to turn into another blood farm. These are all properties that the county owns that have not been taken care of. All right? And I can also tell you, as a commercial real estate guy, that nothing is moving in this area. We're sitting on over 2 million square feet of empty space, commercial and industrial space right now. Not to mention downtown Keene having a number of storefronts and more to come. You know, Blueberry Fields is the one that just popped up. I know 2 others that haven't hit the street yet that are going to come online. I put 2 signs up this week on Colony Mill down the street. All right? So nothing is moving. Cheshire County, and I urge any of you to go on to Southwestern Regional Planning Commission and look at a recent study that was done by Southwestern Regional Planning. Cheshire County is dead last in the state of New Hampshire. We're sort of tied, I think, a little ways with Coos County. Our millennials are moving out. Our population is decreasing. Our average household income is below the state average. We shouldn't be worrying about spending $30, $40 million. We should be focused on how do we fix that problem? How do we bring this county economically, back to where it should be? So I just want to leave you with that last thought, because if you vacate that building up there, and I've heard crazy stories like, well, Marriott Hotel might look at it, or this person might look at it. It's not going to happen. So I said earlier, my mom was in Langdon Place. My father wanted her back home. She was full-blown Alzheimer's. So the only place that we could find her was Maplewood, and we were happier at Maplewood, and we were paying the full fee. We were happier at Maplewood than we were at Langdon. And I give a ton of credit to the staff up there, a ton of credit to the people that have made it what it is. Leave it alone, leave it where it is, put your addition on, and that's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Greg. And just not lobbying and not favoring, just to keep everything on level. The realtor statement, you're correct on what the Marlboro Road property is. But when the county did the jail, we did test borings through the entire property. We bought half, but we test bored the entire property. And
Even the 80 acres? Yeah, well,
and we have all that data, and it is buildable, and the cost would be no more than what it was to do the jail.
I walked it. I've shown it a couple of times. They just dropped the price again for the third or fourth time. Nobody wants it.
Yep. And the second part is, you mentioned that you build a new wing and then mothball the rest until the population changes. The new wing, if we do that, the purpose is to have single rooms, single bath. We're not gaining additional room, or we would still have the same population. We'd still use the same entire facility. You would build a wing, move part of the population into that wing, and then start renovating the main part of the building and move everyone back in. There wouldn't be mothballing space. It would all be utilized in very short order.
And if they want to toy around with this greenhouse concept or whatever, I mean, I heard you on the radio this morning, you're not sold on it. The average person on the street is not sold on it, from what I hear. And I'm out there around every day talking to people in the business, in real estate, so.
Doesn't matter if I'm sold on it. It's my, and I could be totally wrong, it's my perception that the delegation is not at a 2/3 vote scenario for the greenhouse, so that debating that isn't necessarily productive. And one member says he doesn't think there's one vote for it. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Beth Truman. I am a Keene resident. I do want to put out there that I am someone who has a dual perspective. I worked in nursing homes for a number of years, and much like the woman who spoke that had to leave and pitch, I knew every single one of my residents. I worked in the dietary department, and so I knew all of their dietary needs. I knew everybody's allergies. I knew what they wanted to drink before they sat down. I would put their drinks out before they got there. I completely understand what she's talking about. Also, my father was in Pheasantwood nursing home for 12 years. He had Alzheimer's disease. It was advanced. I had him home with me as long as possible, and then when it became beyond my abilities, I moved him to a nursing home. And that placement was based on the available bed. I lived in Keene. If I could get him somewhere closer to me rather than Peterborough, I would have. However, there was no Medicaid accepting facility closer to Keene that had an available bed, and it was not possible. I also want to point out that I am a millennial, and I still live in Keene. And I love it here, and I will stay here forever. I'm raising 3 children here. I wouldn't have it any other way. I do want to remind the delegation that this is a county issue and not a Westmoreland issue. There are 23 towns in the county that all need to be accounted for, and that Keene is the geographic center of that county. And I also want to I do want to bring a common sense perspective in another way to the audience listening here and to the delegation and to the people making this decision. So I do want to ask Mr. Coates, if you wouldn't mind, thank you for providing this budget for us tonight. I understand that in all of the Westmoreland scenarios, there are a number of costs that would be associated with keeping the facility in Westmoreland that are not stated in this spreadsheet because they are Westmoreland costs and not.
We'll argue that.
costs.
There's a wish list.
There's a wish list. Okay.
Wish list.
Well, wish list, I understand that, but there is often, having talked to staff at Maplewood, there is often a single access in inclement weather to Maplewood facility.
It's not a single access. But go ahead.
Okay, just my understanding. Crosses a bridge that is unsafe. And I would like to know if that is included in these costs, and I would also like to know what other costs are not included in this statement that we've been handed out tonight.
I'll answer one part of that. No, it's not included. We don't own that road. We don't own that bridge. We have no legal right to do anything to the road or to the bridge. If it were to stay in Westmoreland, Westmoreland might be part of negotiation that will stay if you bring the road up to a little bit better rate, but we don't have the right to demand it. It's their road. 2, I have not seen any designation that says that is unsafe. And
I saw a report that says that basically if you cross it, you're taking your life in your hands.
I sit on capital budget oversight. I do all the red list bridges. I do the highway. I do the budget for the Department of Transportation. I have not seen any documentation of any of that anywhere. There's been a lot of rumors put out about all the road access and availability to get in and out of Westmoreland. I don't think any of it to this point that I've heard has been particularly accurate. And I appreciate your bringing that to the forefront so we can dispel it.
Yeah, I would love to hear a response to that, so, and also the other costs that are not associated
Well-
with this event.
So, EJA, which is the architectural firm that was hired by the subcommittee to do the work, to do the study around the costs for the nursing homes, you know, here in Westmoreland and in Keene, and also the building cost and the operational cost. In their first meeting, there was a discussion about the build-out, and one of the things that in that meeting, I at the end of the meeting asked was, you know, are some of the things that I'm not hearing that we're addressing being taken care of. After that meeting, I worked with Bruce Harrison, who's the facility director, and we also walked for 3 hours, maybe 4, through that and looked at whether other issues that weren't being addressed, because I'd rather put them on the table now and allow the delegation to have the ability to take a look at if these made sense or not, instead of doing the wing, building it out, and then all of a sudden having to come back and saying, we need to bond for, you know, elevators, we need to bond for other issues that were out there. So we walked through there, because at the end of the day, I think I can speak for us up here, the staff, that wherever we end up, we want the best scenario for the individuals that we care for and for the staff that do the work that they do. And so we wanted to put the delegation in a position where they could make those choices. So there were $4.5 million worth of items that we found that were things that we saw in the administrative portion of the building. Because right now, what we've been talking about is a wing and the residents' rooms. And so we looked at it, and it came down to items such as, you know, the dietary and environmental areas, care units. The environmental is you need new washing machines. You know, they also work in incredibly, if you've been there and done the walkthrough, it's incredibly hot through there too. So to put AC in the administrative unit would be something that we want to be considered. But again, it's up to the delegation to make that choice. The elevators are 40 years old. And the hydraulics, correct me if I'm wrong, Bruce, and the electrical board are things that need to be replaced. So we put those in there. You know, so it came out that we actually needed, if we're going to do that work, we might as well do the whole elevators. Walk-in freezers in the kitchen area. Upgrade the toilets, the toilets so they're ADA compliant. You know, in the administrative areas. There's a dishwasher that I've talked about before that is not just your family-sized dishwasher. It's about a $95,000 dishwasher. I mean, it handles all that they put out there. So these are things that we found that weren't being addressed in air exchange units that are in the what are the 3 rooms? There's the meeting rooms. The 3 meeting rooms, they have air exchange, and what we're finding is they don't actually bring in fresh air. And these are areas where they hold chapel. This is where they have meetings. They have gatherings of everyone. So at the end of the day, what we wanted to do and what we've tried to do is allow the delegation to have that opportunity to make those choices, to put those items in there, what they feel are important. There may be other ways, like a generator. The generator out there, a 500 kilowatt generator, needs to be replaced. Okay? So, but there may be ways that we can take a look at some of these items and see if we can find grants if we qualify for certain things like the generators. You know, there's some doors, and these aren't just regular doors. These are doors that are going to cost you about $4,000 a piece, that maybe we can find some areas in the budget that we can do those. We can't really make that decision until a decision's made on how we're moving forward. But we wanted to make sure that, and I know I've said it multiple times, we wanted to make sure that we put this at the forefront so that they had the information so they could make the educated decision when it came time. And it is an added cost onto the final cost. We understand that. We felt it was important enough to bring forward.
Thank you. Any follow-up?
I just want
Were you
to
good?
mention
Cheryl.
that spreadsheet at the very bottom does identify additional costs that need to be considered for each of the scenarios. And you will see in the Westmoreland version that there is about 4.5 million of potential additional costs to be considered in that
I
scenario.
do see that 4.5 million now, thank you. So that does exceed the 3 million that the gentleman mentioned earlier by Thank you.
Actually, the 3 million he mentioned was for the Keene property to upgrade or to accommodate the land work for Keene. It's the
New market tax credits cover 40% of the cost of building in Keene, then the excess is significant for keeping it in.
That's not the way it works either, but it's not quite the way that worked either. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Johnny Goss, and I live in Elston. I went to the meeting last week in Westmoreland, and I wasn't sure I was going to come to this meeting because I thought I probably had said enough, but I'm really glad I came to this meeting because I have a few more things that I think really need to be said. Back 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I would have guaranteed you I would have never put my mom or my dad in a nursing home. Well, my mom has been in Westmoreland for 4 years. The first year and a half was probably the hardest years of my life. It was the hardest decision I've ever had to make. But the last 2.5 years, 2, 3, that's the right math, it's been fabulous. And I want to give you an example of what Wendy talked about how well the people at Westmoreland know their residents. This happened yesterday, and I hope I can get through this without crying, because this is really important for you all to know what kind of staff and what Westmoreland provides. I got a phone call last night about 6 o'clock, and it was one of the nurses at Westmoreland, and she said to me, "Your mom is having a really hard time. Is it possible that you could speak to her?" And I said, "Absolutely." And I could hear my mom in the background. She kept saying, "No, no, no, that's not the way it is." So I took the phone and I said, "Mom," and she said, "Oh, it's you, I love you," she said. And then she says, "I'm being bad." I said, "You're being bad?" "Yes, I'm being bad," she says. I said, "Okay." I said, "Mom, what's wrong?" I said, "What's going on?" "I don't feel good," she says. "I don't know what's wrong." She says, I don't know what I'm going to do." And she started to cry. So I had to gather myself a little bit so I could continue to talk to her. And I said to her, "Mom," I said, the nurses called me because they know that you're not feeling well and they want to help you." And she said, "Okay." I said, "Is the nurse right there with you?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, they'd like to give you some medicine." I said, "Would you take some medicine?" And this was what this was all over. She didn't want to take any medicine. And I said, "Would you take some medicine? Because if you take some medicine, you're going to feel better." "Yes, I will," she said. I said, "Okay." I said, "Is the nurse right there in front of you?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "This is what I want you to do." I said, "I want you to say to the nurse, 'Do you have medicine for me?' And I said, 'The nurse will give you some medicine.' So she says to the nurse, 'Do you have medicine for me?' And the nurse said, 'Yes, Josie, I do.' And she says, 'So now what do I do?' I said, 'The nurse is going to give you some medicine. She's going to give you a drink.' And I said, 'You're going to feel better in a little while.' 'Okay,' she said. So we continued on, and I said, 'Okay, now,' I said, 'I want you to sit back in your chair, and I want you to put your head back, and I want you to relax.' And I said, 'You're going to feel better in a little while.' Okay, she said. I'm sorry, she said. I said, Mom, there's nothing to be sorry for. You don't have to be sorry. I love you, she said. I said, I love you too. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is because this is how well, whether they have 5 patients, 10 patients, or 50 patients, they knew that if they called me within 10 minutes, my mom would be settled down in her chair and life would be good. Another thing I wanted, several things. I would think it would be devastating to move the nursing home to Keene. I live in Alstead. Doesn't matter if you move it to Massachusetts. I'll still go visit my mother. But it's a much nicer ride from Alstead to Westmoreland than it is from Alstead to Keene on Route 12. Alstead to Westmoreland, yes, you have to go on Route 12, but you know, you get to Westmoreland, you get to see cows, you get to see turkeys, you get to see motorcycles, you get to see the car show. It's amazing what you get to see. I just would ask that you all would really, really think about this. If you don't have anybody in Westmoreland, just remember, you might be there someday.
Steve D'Alessio from the town of Maplewood. I'm kind of a numbers guy, so I think that the delegation and the subcommittee will use the best and talented people to pick and choose the design of the facilities. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you which is a better design for a nursing home facility, but
You're the first one that had that faith, but thank you.
I'm curious as to why all the options came out so close in dollars, why the debt expense was not included in the spreadsheet, and why other things to consider wasn't brought up to the top line for the cost. Because to put a new wing on a facility and then say later we need $4.5 million to fix another part of the facility, that doesn't make sense in any kind of renovation or any kind of construction. You'd rather do it all at one time. So I'm just curious as how come all of the things came out so relatively close, all the options. A $26 million project or a $40 million project to have a couple $1 million difference is not significant in my mind. It just happens.
The people that did all the planning, the layout, and design plans aren't here to speak to that issue.
The question of why wasn't that the cost of construction or the cost of money added to this for the revenue, the expense side of the revenue?
Stand up, Cheryl, please.
I'm Cheryl Trombley. I can present that information to you verbally because I do have it. Why it wasn't like purposely omitted. We kind of gathered information based on the information that came from EGA and tried to summarize it as best as possible. As represented.
Cost of debt on top of it?
Well, I don't really have averages. I can tell you in each of the different scenarios. In the Westmoreland scenarios, these are scenarios that are 20-year bond estimates. It is using a 4.5% interest rate, which is probably conservatively high. But so the estimated for the A1 would be $126.54 per 160,000. So keeping it consistent with the operating expense below. The new wing would be approximately $177.89 per 160,000. The greenhouse, this would be utilizing new market tax credits, and so over the life of it, it would be a 27-year payback because you have 7 years of the new market tax credit scenario, which is interest and taxes, and then a 20-year amortization on a bond. That would be about $177.44 on 160,000 per year. Neighborhood, all the Keene scenarios work the new market tax credits in. 169.13, traditional 155.51, and hybrid 171.30.
So we are looking at something more significant.
And that's actually those. I'm sorry, those numbers I just gave you are. I should actually back up. That's construction and operating.
Oh, okay.
So I apologize, I have all these written down. Let me now go back to just the construction cost. So the infrastructure plus A1 would be 3608. So the 3608 and the 9046 is the 126 that I gave you. The new wing 6975, greenhouse 6398, neighborhood 6820, traditional 5671, and hybrid 6465.
You have a follow-up?
I have just a quick follow-up, just to make sure everybody understands that that's the number of dollars added to the tax bill, not the tax rate, for a $160,000 average house.
The incremental increase, yes.
He asked another question that you haven't dealt with.
Is that why the information is at the bottom?
No, why it isn't two separate things. The reason is because we have to put the new wing on so we can move the people out, and then we can restore one floor at a time and turn it into the modern facility we want. That's why it's not all done in one shot, because we have to have some place to put the people whose rooms are being rebuilt.
That wasn't part of your question, I know.
Well, I heard him say, why wasn't it all done at once?
My
No.
understanding was the 12.5 million was for more infrastructure compares to the existing building.
A wish list
I wish
that was done
my
after the presentation by the architects
Yeah.
and the construction people. That wish
point
list.
would be if you're going to go through all the trouble of bonding everything, you might as well.
Well, that would be looked at before
Yeah.
any vote would be taken or be considered in. Discussions from the public.
I'd
I
like to just-
understand, but
I'd just like to say, I'm not sure that a decision is going to be made on numbers. You know, there's so many bigger things.
That's why I was saying it's all
Yeah.
equal.
why
Thank you.
haven't we left out the greenhouse when it doesn't have one vote, as far as I know?
Because I made an option to the subcommittee to eliminate 2 proposals, and you voted against it. So we kept all the proposals in. It was a vote of the subcommittee to keep all the proposals in until we get
We
to
were
pass
never
these
given
hearings.
the opportunity to leave any of them out.
Actually, I put forth a motion to the subcommittee, Chairman Mann was there, and you voted to keep all of the things in. So that's why it is the subcommittee that made the vote.
I made a couple of motions and they weren't.
Tim, we got to hear what people have
I
to say.
understand,
We
but
need,
why do we keep making the people discuss?
Because
the
you voted to keep
greenhouse?
them in.
Well, I
And
don't.
they're in. The subcommittee voted to keep them in.
I don't remember that I did that.
Well, that's all right, but the subcommittee voted to do it, that's the way it is. And I agree, but
We're
I'm the one that made the motion to take them out.
wasting a lot of time on a thing that's not on the agenda.
And you're making a 5-minute argument over something that you've made the point, and people can take it from there. This is for the public, not us. Yes, ma'am. Purple jacket.
Thank you for saying that it's not going to be made just on numbers.
Would you
Because-
please stand up and state your name and your town, please?
Excuse me, I'm Christine LeClaire. I live in Marlboro, and I did drive from Marlboro through Keene on the not-so-pretty ride from up to Westmoreland. And I did that because my mother was there, and I did that because Westmoreland has one of the best reputations for patient care. And that's why she was there. Now, everybody that's talking about, well, the staff is so wonderful. Yes, indeed, the staff is great, and that's why we chose it. But do you think that everybody's going to quit and go away if the nursing home moves? I don't think so. I really don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to stay as wonderful as it is, no matter where it gets dropped.
Right.
The other thing is, having an elderly mother that was there and died there, I certainly could see how wonderful the staff was. However, if she had a choice of what her environment was as she lived through her last few years, I wonder what it would be. And I'm glad that you're talking to the people up there, although they're probably so happy there that they're not going to want to move and change because elderly don't like change. But then I'm going to ask the question of where would you all want to live if you ended up in a nursing home? And what kind, yes, up on the hill. It's a beautiful place, and I can't tell you how many times I walked my mom out to the little house out there, screened-in house, and she said to me, "Isn't this beautiful?" And yes, it was beautiful, but she said the same thing at Bentley Commons before she went there. And she said the same thing in my backyard. She appreciated the environment, not the trees and the flowers. She appreciated the love and the care and the accommodations that were made for her. So I really hope that we stop and think of who it is that we're really trying to do this for. And the money difference is minuscule, as I can, from my point of view. You know, it's not that much. We're talking about 170, 167, 156. That's minuscule. Let's think about the people. That's all I have to say.
What is your name, please?
I'm Christine LeClaire. My husband works there. That has nothing to do with all of how wonderful it is. The nurses are great. The LNAs are amazing. The food is great. The accommodations are wonderful. If you don't like this, they'll bring you that. But that's not going to change, no matter where the building is. It's only going to be a building. Thank you.
I can tell you, my mom had Alzheimer's and had to be in a renowned facility in town for a brief period for rehab, and they're not happy with every environment. I get phone calls 2, 3, up to 10 times a day in tears. Please get me the hell out of here. So environment isn't always it. But, go ahead.
My name is Ellen Corindia, and I live in Marlborough. As one of the few people present, needing full assistance in all activities of daily living, I have a few brief comments about home-style care, like greenhouses. I am particularly critical of nursing home cultures because I was a nurse. I have seen how well people can be cared for in small settings by visiting my friends who live in a greenhouse in Chelsea, Mass. My concern was about folks with dementia. Last year, I reached out to Dr. Joanne Lynn, who is based in Washington. I asked her opinion of greenhouse homes and their ability to care for all levels of residents. I was particularly interested in dementia patients. Joanne is a geriatric specialist and is the director of the Center for Elder Care and Advanced Illness at the Altris Institute. She is also a consultant to the administrator of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. I value her view because she has nothing to do with the greenhouse movement. Yet, she has a broad view of long-term care settings around the world. She said that greenhouses are terrific and that if the staff were properly trained, all people do better in a settled, home-like environment. She did not have any concerns about dementia patients, only that if they have behavior problems associated with their confusion, it would be better to have a few houses that are specially trained to deal with this population. My research indicates that the folks who we care for at Maplewood will do very well in smaller, home-like environments. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Paula Phillips from Keene. I have several questions.
Could you stand up, please?
I have several questions. It seems like there's a little bit of a distraction about the care wouldn't be the same. But I'm curious, as Chris Posey from City Council, about the lifetime cost. So we may retrofit or do something if we keep it in where it is. But if we build a new facility, wouldn't that be more efficient in terms of both building codes and all that? So I'd like to look at not the immediate upfront cost, but the continuing costs in terms of particularly around energy and other kinds of issues. And so that's one thing. The other thing I guess I would ask Catherine or the staff, how difficult it is in terms of response time for people that need emergency care. And so that's another concern of mine, is not the day-to-day kind of care, but the extraordinary kind of care available. And then the third issue may be that for loved ones who may not have the transportation they may need, would it be better to be in a more centrally located place where there'd be better access or more population around in terms of interaction with the community for those people that may be able to still interact on occasion with the community? And
Lifetime building cost, I think we need the architects here. I don't remember if that question was asked when they were here or not. You, Chris?
I think what you would find is that if you upgrade Westmoreland, you're going to have more efficiencies. One of the added 4.5 million is actually to upgrade our boilers. I think and to change it from steam heat to whatever we found was the best that we could utilize, and that was each boiler was about $175,000 each to upgrade them. So we would do some things there, but the building is the building, and new might be more efficient. But I mean, just because of the way it's structured, but it doesn't mean that Westmoreland we wouldn't be making upgrades to make it more efficient. That would be a hope.
By some existing things as opposed to if you're building new. You might be constrained by.
Not according to the architect. They've already got all that built in.
Yeah.
It's already done. Their design is done. And the rest goes to Catherine, I think. She took furious notes.
So you asked about response time, and we are a little ways away from the hospital. To be honest, if you have a code event that's requiring a cardiac resuscitation, and I wish Wendy were still in the room, but hope you're with us, I think for anybody who's participating in a cardiac resuscitation event, every minute feels like it's 20 minutes. And the response time to wait for the EMS personnel who are more highly trained in advanced cardiac life support beyond what we have in-house, every minute feels like a really, really long period of time. Do you know that the sad fact is, while we will ask any and all of you, if you were ever to come and live with us, what you would choose? Would you choose to be resuscitated? Should we find you non-responsive? That said, sometimes there's a reason why our heart might stop in our 80th or 90th years. And it's pretty uncommon that we can positively, cardiovert someone, that we can resuscitate them and bring them back to life. I think unfortunately Hollywood has done us a disservice. The ER that I used to watch in the 90s, everyone was resuscitated. Everyone is able to be saved. It's miraculous. It's been difficult. I've never seen any of our residents come back after attempting resuscitation from a cardiac event. Even more so, I have to be honest with you, we've seen staff members who have not successfully been resuscitated in a cardiac event and have passed with us quite unexpectedly. So response times are a challenge for us with the distance. That's fair enough. One of the things that we do, Bruce knows, when we have major snowstorms, one of the major priorities is, regardless of what time or day, we must make sure our hill is perfectly cleared. Westmoreland does keep their roads well cleared, so that's something we have to prioritize, and we have to stick people on it 24/7 to make sure we can be accessible. There was a comment earlier, the lady has left, about the accessibility during snowstorms. Maplewood's accessible during storms. Let me just speak to an event that happened after the Hurricane Irene, which came through. The day after the hurricane, that was when we really had a difficult moment, because River Road down on the Chesterfield side had been overcome. Partridge Brook, if you're familiar with Partridge Brook, as you go up, there's a bit of a bridge there. The bridge was completely overcome with water. So the two major ways in and out were completely overcome, and the one bridge that was remaining is the bridge that has been deemed to only be allowed, is it 10 tons? I'm looking to Representative Paul to see if you remember.
There is a weight limit.
There's a weight limit, I forget what it is. It doesn't allow our 18-wheelers over. I'm going to make an educated guess that if we were in that moment, I'm thinking Westmoreland Fire would just cross the bridge. I'd like to hope.
The weight limits are done for liability, not for stress.
Right.
Yes, they would.
So accessibility, after really big storm issues where we've had lots of undermining, definitely it has been a challenge. The record time was one staff member took 6 hours to make it into work because of all of the road damage. If you remember the years ago, the floods of Falstead, and then there was one about 2 years ago. So accessibility is a difficult subject matter. I don't know if I should be thankful for my staff or if I should be admonishing them for when they go through probably unsafe situations, because they know we have got to get people there. It drives me nuts when I hear people say, all non-essential personnel get off the road, except for fire and emergency. Well, I'll tell you what, if you live in a nursing home, you need to have staff be able to get there 24/7. So that's the accessibility question. You asked about transportation. And Johnny, you're fabulous. You're there all the time. But I'm glad that you're trusting us and feeling comfortable to have your own life as well.
Right.
But you represent an example of a population where we do have some families that do come on a routine and regular basis. We do have some residents that we're like their family. They don't have others that may visit. And every once in a while we do lose a resident because the family just can no longer make the trip. They want to, but maybe for health concerns of their own, they find that they need to make a difficult choice to move their loved one to a different home that's closer to where they live. Oftentimes, and Lance is here from our social services department, thank you. I'm sure you've heard this before when you've done tours and had potential admissions. Something that we hear often is you have a good reputation, you're an older building, you could use some sprucing up. And sometimes people will say, despite the reputation, you're just too far away. So we do have some people that don't make the choice to come out. So I hope that helped to answer your question.
Follow up?
Can I go, where are most of your residents coming from initially? I mean, where they most recently lived before they get there?
You know, that's a great question. And when I've been doing the research through the I'm Canadian, sorry. I just realized
I've been enjoying.
I've been speaking Canadian.
What do you mean? I don't understand.
I don't know.
The last hall we're in didn't have air conditioning, so we just asked her to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, sorry.
The
The most recent.
We threw her for a loop.
I've actually, I've been looking at that for several years now. One of the challenges in figuring out where people come from, because we always look for the county tie, it's going to be a county taxpayer base to assist us. So we want to look that there's a county tie before you're coming in for admission. But many people will come from, say, Keene, because that's where elder housing is. Or they might come from Walpole. There's a complex there, or Hinsdale. So sometimes their last place of residence is a little misleading because it's a place where it was an interim. Right. So the majority of the folks do come from Keene, but we have quite a number from the Walpole, Westmoreland, and even Hinsdale and Chesterfield area that do come to us. And I guess the great question would be for our counterparts in the Keene area, how many of them service folks from Westmoreland, Chesterfield, Hinsdale, and I don't even know that answer.
Follow up?
So the family members are loved ones, the people that are visiting. Do you have an idea of generally where they're living, or that's too dispersed? Like they may not even be in New Hampshire.
Right. So when I take a look at who their families are. So I look at the resident, do they have the family tie? The family, do they have the family tie? Honestly, it's all over the board. We have families from as far away from London.
Okay, that's an outlier.
Right. Our longest home safety evaluation was Singapore. And that's a long story. And the county did not pay for that. The family paid for the home safety and the therapist. But.
Besides the
So again, most of the families are from the Cheshire County area. Really, a lot of them come, if you look at Chesterfield Hill,
yeah.
so whether it's Route 9, Route 12, a lot come from there, but not all of them. We don't often have folks that come to us from Jaffrey, you know, the real outliers. Yeah.
Doc?
My name is Dr. Bob England. I recently retired as a 35-year tenured physician at Dartmouth Keene. For 25 of those 35 years as a full-time primary care physician, I was making regular monthly nursing home visits within Keene to an average of about 30 nursing home patients. And that included all of the Keene nursing homes and the Winchester nursing home as well. I was not directly involved in attending to patients at Maplewood, but for various reasons, many of my own patients were hospitalized, were admitted there for long-term care, and through Maplewood's physicians, primarily Dr. Barry Stern, who sadly passed away several years ago, and Dr. Gary Shapiro, who is retiring after 40 years at the end of this week. We all wish him well. Certainly the care at Maplewood has been superb. Certainly there were issues about the air conditioning or the lack of air conditioning, about 4 people sharing one bathroom, and it's been demonstrated very, very clearly that seniors sharing a bathroom result in an increased incidence of infection from one person to another. And in any case, it looks as if that is going to be repaired or renovated or whatever. Anyway, about a year and a half ago, I was part of the team from Keene, including several selectmen, who visited the greenhouse facility, which is just north of Albany. We spent a day there, and it was fascinating. I was able to include in that tour a 3/4 of an hour conversation with their attending physician, who was a half-time employee of that greenhouse facility, and the director of nursing. And I've also reviewed the literature put out by Greenhouse, indicating that hospitalizations of greenhouse residents are significantly less than those of other nursing homes. That the contentment of the residents and their families from greenhouse facilities, their satisfaction levels are considerably higher as well, and that bed sores of the residents of the greenhouse facilities are virtually non-existent. When we were there, spending the full day there, it was most enjoyable to be seeing smiles on the faces of the residents. Following lunch, one of the staff members spent about 3/4 of an hour playing one of the word games with the 12 residents, and they were having fun. Some participated extensively, some marginally, some not at all, but they were really, really enjoying it. Initially, I was skeptical about the greenhouse concept, but having done a literature search, having visited the facility, I am a very enthusiastic supporter thereof. And based on previous comments this evening, it is my feeling that that the decision, as people have said this evening, with the cost being largely similar, plus or minus $1 million or $2 dollars, and when you're talking $30 to $40 million, what's $1 million? Anyway, the decision should be made on resident care when the total costs are sort of comparable, and keep an open mind. Thank you.
In the back, oh, you're next. Yes.
Hi, good evening. I'm Jacqueline Headings. I'm a resident of Keene, and my mom is a resident at Maplewood. She moved there last August. Just a couple comments. This is my first hearing here, but I've been following it, and this is just my opinion, but I would just encourage us when we have this platform, the consensus is everybody thinks the staff is great. I would encourage us to put that to rest, and let's focus and use our voices and our time with the delegation here to focus instead on an action or questions, something that helps us move forward. So just my 2 cents. A couple of thoughts. I'm quite concerned about the notion of doing construction, building a wing while you have residents there. Something to think about, okay? If all of a sudden there was somebody building a new house or doing rehab next door to you, okay? Your threshold of tolerance would only go so far, okay? If we suddenly had to do major reconstruction at one of the elementary schools, would we do that during the school year? No, we would not. So if we wouldn't do that with children, I find it so disrespectful that we would consider that A-okay to do for seniors. Now add to the level of that, seniors that have any level of dementia or physical impairment or Alzheimer's. Anything just minorly disruptive that you and I would consider just a blip in the sand is a huge event for a senior. If we were to do construction and try to rehab, Band-Aid, or major overhaul, I guarantee you the stress level on the residents will go through the roof, which then dominoes to the stress level of the staff, which then just affects the whole quality of living in that environment. Okay? I don't want to see more spending more than anybody else does. But when we've got ADA compliance right in our face, when you've got the consideration of what those residents can tolerate, again, going back to what I said about construction, noise level, comings and goings, that's just ridiculous, in my opinion. So that's another comment, something for us to think about. Another thing, too, that we have to remember is there's a lot of private pay facilities in Cheshire County. In the case of my mother, she has no money. So it was a combination of where there was a bed available and who would take Medicaid. More and more aging seniors do not have a ton of money that can just pick and choose where they want to live, okay? Myself, when it comes my time, I wonder if I'm going to be in the same boat. And I'm sure there's a lot of you, as I look around, that are further ahead on the life chain than me, that are probably going to be in the same boat. Private pays a dime a dozen. So if we think about what makes our community great here in Cheshire County, it's that we look out for each other. You need the Medicaid. Just another thought too, as if let's say it moves to a new location, you build in a new spot, I would encourage the delegation to keep working aggressively on finding new ownership of the existing building. I think for a very, it's obvious to me, but as you continue to work aggressively on that, if you get persons or developers that want in on that, that is going to help this whole process with building something new, because you will have more of Cheshire County residents ready to come on board with you and buy into the notion. We've seen, other buildings where we progress forward and we build, and then we're left with a vacant building. So keep pushing hard. I mean, I totally think there's potential there if we relocate. It's a solid building, but it's just not going to work to rehab it when you've got residents there that can't handle the stress of that. So, thank you.
Sir. My name is David Moody from Alstead. I spend perhaps an hour and a half a week at Maplewood over the last 3 years. My brother was accepted at Maplewood after we had visited 7 different nursing homes in the region, none of which would accept him. Maplewood did. When I go there, I'm welcomed by name, by the staff, by the volunteer staff at the desk. When I ask any questions about his health, his activities, such as they are, I receive a full report. Every month, we engage in a patient care visit with the staff to determine how he's doing and what the next steps might be. Unfortunately, he does not recognize me anymore. I don't know if he really understands who I am, but he's clean, he's well fed, and he's loved by the staff and by me. Major question, and I don't want to repeat what many people have already said about the quality of care at Maplewood. I would just note that in institutions, it's the people that makes the institution, not the infrastructure, although the infrastructure enables good care. There's no doubt about that. But when it comes down to it, it's the people. The profile that is described here with respect to Maplewood's resident population in 2013 indicates that 33% need assistance in feeding themselves. And I help feed my brother when I go down there, particularly at lunchtime. And I would assume that everything above that is cumulative. It sounds to me like a profile of dementia and Alzheimer's progression. And I would only ask that you design a system of care for what this profile will look like in 2025, or maybe 2030, whatever the life expectancy of this building facility will be. We know that our population is aging, we're living longer, and as a result, dementia and Alzheimer's is becoming increasingly frequent. So all of these issues are going to be affecting our senior population more and more. I am sure that the greenhouse approach is an excellent approach for those who have their mental facilities in place and are perhaps disabled, but are mentally aware of their situation. In terms of my brother's condition at the present time, he doesn't care whether he's in a room with one person, 2 persons, or 3 persons. He doesn't know. He has fun going around in his wheelchair every day, wheeling into other people's rooms. He violates the rules of the Maplewood. He's transgressing into other people's personal space. But the other residents don't seem to mind, and particularly their caregivers, who I have met many of now, and we're sort of part of a family, understand it's just my brother, and they're not disturbed by this. So, what are we going to look like as a population in 20 or 30 years, and are we designing to care for that population?
Thank you very much. In the far back.
Andy Mackey, I live in Westmoreland. I spoke last week, and went home, my wife asked me about the meeting, and I'm like, well, they still want to move it to Keene, and they want to put a drug rehab building in Westmoreland. And she's like, why don't they put the drug rehab building next to the jail? If you think about it, you still qualify for your tax credits. Monadnock Economic Development Corp still gets to put their name on a building. And your drug rehab building is closer to the people that may need it more than the people in Westmoreland. I had a question about Antioch and the future uses of the building. That kind of got ruled out last week, is that correct?
Correct.
That's still on the handouts? In the future meeting, if that is, can we just take Antioch out of there as an option for the use of the old nursing home? It's on the future of Maplewood.
Right, we met with Antioch, and I think I had this discussion in Westmoreland. We met with Antioch to see if they would be interested in the building, and they have a strong environmental program, but they are at some point looking at what their future is. They haven't made any decisions yet, but they definitely know that they want to stay in Keene, if not more centrally downtown.
Right, so it's not a realistic option for the nursing home, the old nursing home, is that right?
No, it was one of the things that we said in here is that we did meet with them.
Right. Okay.
That was what that was.
I think that building, if it's so bad that we have to build a new nursing home somewhere else, nobody else is really going to want something similar.
Meaning, if we had found another source out at Westmoreland, well, here's the thing. It depends. It depends on what the use is and who wants to come in, because nursing homes, correct me if I'm wrong, you have strict guidelines and criteria that have to be met that other developers may not have to meet as many of those standards.
I think unless there was somebody that signed a line and put money down saying, yes, we want that building as soon as you vacate it, I think Westmoreland may be stuck, or the county may be stuck with a building that's vacant like the jail for us.
I think it's one of the reasons why we said that we wanted to figure out what the true costs were so that we could present that, so people knew that if it was mothballed, it'd be $350,000 a year to keep it empty.
Just to maintain it.
Keep an empty building.
How much was it to demolish it?
It would be a guesstimate.
1.5.
Okay, so the woman talking about the difference between $3 million proposal and $1.5 million proposal, that demolition might make the difference in $1.5 million demolition. I think she talks about that. Anyway, what I'm getting at is all right, the handout still mentions Antioch. It's not going to happen with Antioch, and it's probably not going to happen with some of the others, but I don't mind it being in there. I don't mind the others being in there. We don't know for certain, but Antioch probably shouldn't still be in the handout as an option.
Well, we can say that verbally, but we got one more meeting to go. I don't think anybody's going to be printing out a whole new set of pamphlets.
All right. Nobody mentioned anything much about the greenhouse in Positive Light. Last week it was in Westmoreland, and it got brought up again. I think that there may be an attractive, the greenhouse model, if you're more functioning, may be an attractive option for people that are in the early stages of needing a nursing home. What I'm afraid of is, if we move to Keene, we lose the assisted living in Westmoreland, is that correct?
We may lose it either way.
Okay, but we're definitely going to lose it if we go to Keene.
Yes.
Would some of those people in assisted living then want to go into the beds that are coming into Keene?
They qualify.
So what I'm afraid of is we're going to push out the people that really need, that don't know where they are, they can't take care of themselves. We're going to push those people out of county care, and basically they wind up with the county care because nobody else wants them. The public, or the private nursing homes really don't want the extremely difficult patients. That's why we wind up so many in Westmoreland. Westmoreland does a good job with them. What I'm afraid is we're going to push those people away. The people that we, as a community, really need to be taken care of are going to get pushed out. Because if we're limited to 150 beds, and the people that qualify for nursing, for assisted living, or qualify for a nursing home, if they're reasonably competent and capable, they could go to another building in the community. Whereas the people that are in severe states of dementia and other areas really get pushed to the county, and they become our care. And I'm afraid that if we fill up our 150 beds that were allotted with people that qualify but could go elsewhere, we're going to push out the people that we should be taking care of by going to the greenhouse. If it was up to me, I would leave it. I live in Westmoreland. I'd like to see the nursing home stay in Westmoreland. I think building a wing and making it work would be ideal, and it would still allow us to take care of the people that are in the community that we need to take care of. I guess that's all I have to say.
I just want to follow up with you. I've heard the comment a couple of times that after we left Westmoreland, the population there had the impression that a decision had been made. And if that was the perception of that meeting, I apologize profusely. That is certainly...
I think you were pretty clear that, that no definite decision has been made. Nobody was clear where it's going to go. It's probably going to go above the current jail, but you couldn't, nobody would say that. It's kind of one of the unsaid things that we just assume that you're still pushing hard to...
Well, let me say one thing, follow up to that too. You get 23 members of the delegation. A bond issue takes a 2/3 vote. It's going to require 16 votes to do anything. And currently, my talents over the years from 4 or 5 speakers ago, going back into the 70s, my talents have been counting votes. Opposition party speakers used to ask me to do their count. At the moment, there isn't a count to do anything. So, as we progress, I'm hoping we get to a yes. But if you ask for a vote today, it's not going in Keene, it's not leaving Westmoreland, and nothing's going to happen. It's going to be crisis management.
And just to if it moved to Keene, we're definitely going to lose our assistant living. Is that correct?
No, that is actually one of the misconceptions, is conceivably we'd actually be complying with federal regulations.
Right,
conceivably,
but it wouldn't stay in this current brick building that it's in.
No decision. That could occur, and you could lease the nursing home part out to someone else and still maintain that. I don't know if that's cost effective. There would have to be discussion. No decision. So I wouldn't write it off, and I wouldn't write it in, like any other proposal that you've heard so far. Chris.
Just because I've now heard this like 3 times, and it's not directed at you, but when I hear that kind of conversation around, it cheapens the work that the delegation, the subcommittee has worked extremely hard to do. And I hope that you can take it back to the people in Westmoreland and other places, that the discussions and the conversation and the work that the subcommittee has done, and prior to that the task force, has been honest and upfront, and hard questions have been asked, and arguments have occurred. And to be honest with you, I've come in, late in the process to this, and watched this from afar, and I wouldn't be a betting man on this one way or the other, because I think they're still in the midst of really trying to figure this out, and this is what this conversation is all about. So if there's a way that people that may have this perception can understand that this has been a true and honest conversation, and I know even the paper has said that they need to make a decision. They're doing their due diligence. That's how I perceive it. That's what I've seen so far. And I just needed to say it because I've now heard this 3 times, and I just felt it needed to be said.
Thank you. Linda.
And I was on the original task force to discuss and review and contemplate and receive testimony from very many different types of people who are involved in taking care of elders. And after being on that task force, as you know, as the public knows, our recommendation was for you to look at the greenhouse project. I was really moved by Ellen's comments tonight. She and I both have been to Chelsea, where she has a friend who has the same diagnosis she has. And I watched Steve living a very wonderful life, up to and including deciding that what he and a friend of his wanted to do was go skydiving. And so the facility arranged for these 2 young men with this diagnosis to go skydiving. It was the most miraculous movie I've ever seen in my life. He showed us the movie of them jumping out of this plane and living life as fully as they could with the assistance of other people. It was just wonderful. part of what moves me to want to see Cheshire County be the first county in New Hampshire was a moment like that, to have the greenhouse be offered to people. Like all of us sitting in this room, none of us are getting younger, we're all getting older. I want us all to have a place where we can live life as fully as we can every single day, whether we're 75 or 95 or 102. Maplewood is a wonderful place. My mom has lived in assisted living there now for 12 years. She loves it there. I love it there. She's gotten good care. But when she had to go into nursing for some care, she didn't sleep as well because it was noisy. There were more people on the floor. And, you know, as I lived through that month with her and as I was on this task force, I really said, you know, there are better ways for people to live as they age. So I know the delegation's getting tired of listening to me saying some of the same things, but I really, really would hope that you would consider the greenhouse option. I would hope that all of you would go online and just Google greenhouse and see what's happening. It's happening all over the world. And they're wonderful, wonderful settings where people with all kinds of diagnoses can live. Dementia, Alzheimer's, handicaps of all kinds. It's a very different kind of philosophy and approach. And it took me a while to stretch my mind around it because I didn't think it would work, but it does work. Thank you.
Only follow-up I have, Linda, is I've known you for 40 years. You haven't aged a bit. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Lisa Sievert from Nelson, and I do have a almost relative who's been up at Maplewood for 3 years, and yes, love the staff, love the care. But my comment is about the land that the county owns up there. I would say no matter what you do, don't sell it. Especially don't give it away. It is, as that gentleman said, it is a jewel. The forefathers of Cheshire County who picked up that piece of land and used it for county-needed infrastructure, they were brilliant to do that. So I think, this is my first meeting. I feel like I'm still digesting information. Right now, I feel like staying in Maplewood in the current facility, new wing, sounds like the right way to go. But it's like, no matter what, don't get rid of that land. And especially don't give it away.
No plans, no intent to give away any land under any circumstance. No plans at the moment to sell any land to anyone. If anything would occur, it would be a lease of a building, and that would only be if the vote was taken to move to Keene to lease it. So no plans of doing anything with the property except keeping it. Chris?
Yeah, and just to follow up with that, the other half that I work with are the commissioners, and they are working extremely hard to maintain the what we have up there. We RFP'd the farm, so that we didn't renew the lease on the prior person, but we went out and RFP'd, and we got some great people that bid on it, and we actually it's Stuart Adams is now doing over that whole area of the farm, and there's in the rights. No, but rights. The rights are still there too with their. So we have two people up there, and there is we actually want to work on the farm and bring it back to the community. The land, if the land for the nursing home is the land for the nursing home, and that I agree with Dan, that would be a lease thing. But there is no desire that I'm aware of, except for the 5 acres, which is the blood farm, which has to be dealt with. And so we're selling that, but there's been rumors there too that we're cutting it up, and I'm not aware of any conversation whatsoever, except for that we understand that we need to be caretakers and stewards of that property, and that's it.
Cameraman.
I just looked around town, I found at the Commons today, and that's an extremely old building that was redone to make a nursing home. This courthouse is really old, the EF Lane, the Colony Mill over in Brattleboro. They've got the Latches Hotel. And I find it hard to believe that we're thinking about a 40-year-old building that one of the suggestions is that we abandon it or take it down to build something new, when all of these old buildings can be reused.
Thank you. And while we're waiting for the next question, one part I didn't tell you is the process we're going through. The delegation's having the 5 meetings all around the county, not the delegation, the subcommittee, and all members of the delegation are invited to show. After all of that's done, the subcommittee is going to regroup, have a discussion, and hopefully be able to make a recommendation to the executive committee. Simultaneously, the commissioners, who are the people that actually have the job of making the recommendation and putting proposals before the delegation, they're going to make a recommendation of their own to the executive committee. Then hopefully the executive committee will make a singular recommendation to the full delegation, and my intent is to try to bring a vote somewhere in September, October to get there. Now, back to questions and comments, and I'm still going to stay on my path as best as possible to recognize anyone that hasn't been to other meetings yet or spoken yet. Yes, ma'am. Red shirt.
Thank you. My name is Mary Jensen, and I'm from Chesterfield. And I want to thank you all for all the incredible work that you've done on this. I am especially thankful that the greenhouse has come up as an option here, because it is it's a really new concept. And the places that I've read about, the research I've done on it has shown that people do very well living in the greenhouse scenario because it is so much like being at home. And so I don't know if the greenhouse is the right model for us, or neighborhood, or hybrid, but I'm hoping it ends up being one of those things, because in my visits to my mother-in-law in her nursing home, the sound of the clanging doors, because they're all steel doors closing, I worked at Keene State for a long time, it just strikes me that it's very industrial and institutional. And I love the greenhouse effect for the fact, I don't know how I'm saying it, the greenhouse project, because it's like being at home. You have a kitchen, you have a dining room, you have your own bedroom, you have your own bathroom. It's what I call human scale, where I see the nursing home as industrial scale. So I really hope that in the long run, first off, I hope that the county commissioners make a decision this time, that by this time next year, whatever we've chosen, whether we're happy with it or not, collectively, that we've made a decision and we're moving forward, because we really can't wait any longer. And I hope that it comes up with personally, I hope it comes up with something that's a bit of a hybrid or a neighborhood model, so that it's more human scale and not as industrial, so that as we go forward, to your comments, sir, in the next 50 years, that we're still being able to meet the needs of people in 50 years and on the work that we do today. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
April Reed, I'm from Keene, and I'm probably going to become the most unpopular person in this room. But when my mother had to go into a nursing home several years back, I looked at all of the due diligence, went everywhere, checked everything out, even had her signed up for a while at Maplewood. Not that she was there, but we did the paperwork. My sister came up from New York to help me with this big decision, where to place her. We ended up putting her in Keene. And it has nothing to do with the quality of the staff up at Maplewood. I mean, it's stellar. Their reputation was right up there. But that wasn't all of the consideration for us. I went to see Mom every single day for 2.5 years. And that was because I could. She was extremely accessible. I would have to drive 10 minutes down the road, and there she was on a good road. The hospital was like 5 minutes away from this nursing home. So I knew, and there were a couple times when she had to go to the hospital, like that, she was there. I didn't have to worry about washed out roads. I didn't have to worry about icy driving. I didn't have to worry about her being 4 stories up and, how's she going to get out of there in case of a fire? There were just so many things. The whole thing about shared bathrooms. I mean, true, she had to share a bathroom, but it was with one other person. It was a very home-like setting that she ended up in. And I found Maplewood, I'm sorry, I found it to be like a hospital, you know, long corridors and kind of barren eating rooms. So I think the staff, wherever they end up, the Maplewood staff will do a fine job, but I would really love to give them better tools to work with and a nicer place for me to go to, because that's not that far down the road. So, thank you.
You'll be taken care of, John. Anyone for a first time that has not been to another meeting and has not spoken at another meeting? Former Representative Pearson, and I also need to stand corrected. The delegation is one member shy, so the threshold to hit 2/3 is 15 votes.
Great Matt. First off, Will Pearson from Keene. Just a real quick question. What's the relationship right now with Maplewood and the Keene State Nursing Program? I know it's kind of in its infancy, but I look at the program as being a good resource towards whichever nursing home comes to be. Does anyone know?
Catherine.
Thank you.
Actually, while the Keene State program was being developed, I was invited to sit at the table with others. For Keene State to be able to get even accredited to begin with, the community had to make a promise that we would be able to host the students coming through. And luckily, we've been able to host as many students as they've been able to send us. So even before it truly got off the ground, Maplewood made a connection with them right off the bat. Similarly, we have a connection with the River Valley Community College also. So.
Anyone for a first time? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Patricia Rodriguez and I'm from Westmoreland.
Can you speak up just a little bit, please?
My name is Patricia Rodriguez and I'm from Westmoreland and I'm a nurse and I have worked in many different nursing homes in the area and even outside of this area. And my intuition tells me that you really need somewhat of a hybrid kind of a facility because one thing does not work for everyone. And when you do get people that are with advanced dementia, that does come to a point where having your own room and what you see outside is not as significant anymore. So that's why I think it's important to have both the individual aspect and somewhat of a group aspect that does make it easier for people to keep a very much closer eye on people, which sometimes needs to be done. In terms of where it should be, I think that to be fair to all the people of Cheshire County, it should be more central. I mean, and it should be closer to facilities, not the services they need. I mean, people will visit more often. You'll get more volunteers to come by. You'll get a lot more if it's somewhere where it's easier to get to. And I think for Cheshire County, if you're saying it's last in the state in terms of all these parameters, well, it could become quite a big attraction to be considered more advanced, having a more advanced facility located here. I don't know why they're not thinking about making where Maplewood is now into more assisted living. I mean, that's where people who are capable of getting out and about and can appreciate the outdoors more would want to be, is somewhere where you're in a beautiful setting. I don't know if that option has been put out there at all or not, just to expand assisted living out there. And once, if the people did the nursing home aspect, because like you said, you can renovate an old building to look beautiful. It can be done. We all know it can be done. And one thing about the greenhouse model that I don't agree with is I don't think that any place should ever be all single rooms, because frankly, there's a lot of people that like to have a roommate. There's a lot of people that don't want to be alone. They want to have a roommate. So a combination of single and double rooms would be much better than all one or all the other. That just makes total sense to me. And I think the air conditioning thing is very important because, and then the noise factors. Everybody wants peace. You know, you get older, you want peace. You want peace. You don't want noise. You don't want to have to deal with other people's dementia if, you know, because they're right there and they can't stop from being disruptful to the environment right around them. I mean, you just really need a more modern facility, and I think it should be more central, to be fair to people who live in Jaffrey and whatever, that, like you said, how many of them are going to go to Westmoreland, you know? It's just, you know, when you're considering the money factor, if the prices aren't that much difference, then I think that going for personal care provides much more dignity. That's what everybody wants. Everybody wants to be able to preserve their world as long as possible. And you're not going to get that even by just renovating Maplewood.
Thank you. Anyone for first time that has not been to another meeting? Finally, you get your shot.
And you've held me off very well this evening.
Thank you. I tried.
You're trying to avoid me.
No, I saw your hand. I was going to get there. I promise you.
My name is Ernie Parham, and I'm from Westmoreland, and I've been a volunteer at Maplewood for the past 5 years. And I've been following this situation for the last 18 months. I have EGA's figures here, and I have a pamphlet that you were given this evening, and also another set of figures. There's no doubt that Maplewood is probably the best care in the county. I have no qualms about that. You have nursing homes in Peterborough, you have them in Winchester, you have 4 or 5 in Keene, if not more. But what I'm saying is, I've got EGA's figures here, and they disclose the taxes and interest will pay the first 7 years. I have the pamphlet here that explains construction costs and fund resources. If you look at the funding resources, it includes your tax breaks. On B1, it does not include $9.1 million taxes and interest will pay over the first 7 years. On B2 neighborhood, it doesn't include the $9.8 million of taxes and interest you'll pay over the first 7 years. B3, $11.5 million you'll pay over the first 7 years. B4, $13.3 million you'll have to pay over the first 7 years. And then at the end of the time, we're financing anywhere from $26 to $21 million for those options, when you're only financing close to $29 million or $27 million to renovate the entire Maplewood situation. So I think it's a no-brainer than $29 million compared to 33, compared to 37, 36, 37, 33, or 43, or 38. $27 million is the way to go to keep the tax dollars down on our senior citizens. We are very rapidly becoming a gray county, like I said. And our gray people didn't get an increase in their income tax last year. I didn't get one. And they're not likely to get one this year. I've seen the government cut travel pay, so I know doggone well the economy is not advancing any, at least not enough to get a COLA increase. So I think we have to consider. EGA said if we remodel the existing facility, we can get another 40 years out of it. You're not going to get but 40 out of a new building. But 27 million is a lot less than what it's going to cost us overall. They've already asked, the county's stated 7% increase this year at the beginning. So it's probably going to even out about a 4% increase on your tax bill. But what's it going to be when they start including all the taxes and interest we have to pay the city of Keene over 7 years? And if I remember correctly, we had to pay Monadnock Indian Economic Development Corporation $250,000 to get the tax credits and manage them over 7 years. I still think keeping Maplewood the way it is, renovating, adding 75 rooms, and finishing the other building is the most reasonable way to go for the public. Thank you.
Your turn, finally.
Thank you. My name is Mike Forrest. I live in Keene. I have been on the Maplewood Task Force ever since the first meeting, I believe, and I missed the first one because I didn't know about it. I do have familiarity with nursing homes. My father was in a nursing home in Sullivan County, their equivalent to Maplewood. My mother was in various assisted living in the Claremont area, in the Keene area, and lived at Maplewood. They all received very good care. During the course of my time with the task force, I visited 3 greenhouses. One in Westwood, Mass., which the entire unit was for Alzheimer's patients. That's the best Alzheimer's unit I have ever seen. And my father was in the Alzheimer's unit in Sullivan County. I visited the greenhouse in Quincy, Mass. The same unit that Ellen referred to. It's a unit of 10 beds. They all had ALS, and it was absolutely amazing what they were doing. I visited the greenhouse in upstate New York, which was just regular older people. 4 of which were in wheelchairs, 6 were not in wheelchairs. And it was the happiest house that I've seen for seniors. I really think greenhouse is the way to go, and it will handle patients with any sort of diagnosis.
Further comments, statements, discussion, questions? Go ahead.
Bob Rockman. Is the tax credit guaranteed? At $15 million, is that guaranteed?
Tax credit?
Well, tax.
Free market, new market.
Depends on the property. It depends on the property. And again, that would be something negotiated with presumably Monadnock Economic Development.
I understand that we do add on to Maplewood that some of the features for the greenhouse. Greenhouse, I think, has been taken as 15 separate buildings when they refer to greenhouse here. Some of the features of those greenhouse units can be included in the addition to Maplewood and Westmoreland. Is that correct?
My understanding is that is, yeah, it's correct.
Okay. So I mean, we've heard a lot about greenhouse. The only thing I missed was probably aromatherapy tonight, but if those can be incorporated into a new unit attached to the current place in Westmoreland, you're getting the best of both worlds.
I'll come back to Ms. Phillips. Yep.
I have a question about the process. I heard you say that the subcommittee was going to be meeting to discuss possible options, that they were going to present to the executive committee, and then the executive committee was going to present one option, to the delegation. Process is all of these meetings are public meetings, I understand, and they should be well advertised so that anyone in the public who wishes to attend should attend.
You're required by law to do that.
I have attended most of the subcommittee meetings and found it very interesting and helped me with my thinking. I would like to be sure that these other meetings are all advertised so that we can attend. And I will go on record now as saying, I have not said it to date, even though I've been with this thing for 2 years, that I would like to see us stay out in Westmoreland. I have had patients or clients of mine who have chosen Westmoreland over some of the facilities here in Keene, and I myself have been hospitalized and was very happy to be up in Lebanon, where I could look out and see forest and fields instead of seeing other buildings. So I go on record now, finally, as Tim has asked me 2 years ago, what do you want? I would like to see us stay in Westmoreland.
Thank you. Anyone else for first time? Counselor? You had your hand up.
Oh, yeah, I just had a question.
Stand up, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is it topography over at Westmoreland amenable to building greenhouses? I don't think so.
Greenhouses as in the traditional layout,
But
no.
I thought that was the question that was asked. Can we do?
The question that was asked is, can you put greenhouse-esque features into an addition?
Sorry, I missed the S. Yes, because the topography would not allow for that.
Actually, it would allow one or two, I think, but
Yeah.
it's not real.
Right.
Not real. Yes.
Jeanette Hubert from Westmoreland. I have a numbers question. Down on the lower section of your spreadsheet, purchase of land and remediation. That is in addition to the construction. That's the actual straightforward buying the property. Is that it?
Correct.
Correct. And it says $150,000 to $300,000.
Correct.
Last year, when the first round of presentations was given to promote the greenhouse, Monadnock Development, they told us they bought an option on the land, the same land, and they were going to spend $1 million on that land. What happened?
They gave up the option. The real estate market in Cheshire County is as stagnant as I've seen in my lifetime. I've been in real estate for the last 40 years, I think. If the Register of Deeds were here tonight, I think she would tell you that the revenue coming in from the Register of Deeds is probably the lowest it's been in about 40 years. And properties are being made available at bargain rates.
I'd say
It just so you know, it wasn't $1 million. It was between $285,000 and $300,000.
I have, it was $1 million on the paperwork that I
I'm
was
just
seeing.
telling you that the paperwork may say one thing, but what the percentage was put down, that's what. But I don't want to get too much into it because then you're starting to talk. I don't want
Well,
to.
I don't understand because I don't know what they paid for the option. I don't know what they paid for that. They didn't say. But they put the option and they were saying, we better hurry up and do this before this option expires so we can get this land. And they were going to spend $1 million for it. And now you're telling me that we can get it for 85% off. That's quite a bargain.
I'm not telling you that, I'm not sure if I should even get into it, but I don't ever recall $1 million price tag, and I do know what the option was, and it wasn't for $1 million, it was for $300,000. That's factual, that's documentable. The $1 million is not documentable. Further questions, further discussion? Statements, opinions? Yes, sir. Oops.
Melvin Morgan, I have a question on item 31. Near future. How would you define near future on
Part 31 on the spreadsheet.
These are the upgrades needed in the near future.
Oh, define near future is what you're asking.
So you're talking about the $4.5 million?
Yes.
These are things that when I worked with the facilities director, he felt within the next year to 2 years that we would need to be addressing these issues. And if we were going to be doing that, correct me if I'm wrong, if we were going to be doing that, then we should get this out there so that the delegation could have that awareness.
So that would be done before the construction?
In concert with, it would be part of the bond.
You're going to tear apart the building, and there are things that are looming like an elevator needing fixing. It doesn't make sense not to do the elevator as part of the
Why
part of
doesn't
the
it make
renovation.
sense to include that 4.5 million in the total for those two options?
Because it was a wish list that would be debatable within the delegation, and that wish list came about after all of those other figures had been put forth by the architect. So these were items put forth by the staff of the county, not the architect.
But there are items that are going to be needed to enable the facility.
Which is why it's on there. We don't know if all 4.5 million, we don't know the price accuracy, we don't know if all of those items are needed or if they're desired.
There were some items on there that we thought that there was a possibility that maybe we could look at different ways to fund some of those to make them come to fruition. You know, and again, it was put forward so that the delegation could have that option to go forward with that. So it's like the generator. You know, if we qualify, could we, through Homeland Security say, I'm just throwing it out there, I'm not saying that is, but could we somehow get monies, that would offset the cost of the generator portion, all, whatever it may be? Those are things that we'd look into.
Well, then,
Follow up.
whatever items that are necessary for the existing facility to last for the 40 years should be included. Maybe not all maybe not the 4.5 million, maybe it's 3.5 or maybe it's 6.5. They should be included though.
All of that discussion will be had.
Cost when you're comparing that to the other ones.
Agreed. Thank you. Follow up?
Sorry, Deanna, I have to do it.
I know, you can't resist, and you got the compatriots of the same.
I have here the greenhouse financial feasibility model from when it was first presented. May I have a witness? Does that not say acquisition costs, land, $1 million?
That's what it says.
Thank you. So I'm just saying, maybe you had a different record for 300,000. Those of us who went through this entire document to read it and find out what was going on were told by the document that it was $1 million. I also remember hearing it in meetings as $1 million. So I don't want people to think I'm making this up out of my hat.
That was the early concept on buying flat-out property without the new market tax credits, without being out near the jail. That is absolutely correct. That was conceptual. That was not the reality. The reality of what they put down for an option was a completely different amount and a completely different property and a completely different price. The million was looking at something of, and this is not real. Suppose they bought the drive-in theater, the old drive-in. Might be $1 million. Be a great locale, but not happening.
Comment?
Of course.
I grew up in County Westmoreland and moved away, spent 16 years in Texas. And I come back here and just like everybody else, most of these representatives are elected, much like Washington. But it's getting much like Washington that we do not have full disclosure of what the actual cost is going to be. And I hate to think our representatives are a lot like our politicians. I'd like to think they would consider their constituents and their money than what they desire.
Well, you're absolutely right, but this is conceptual. We are nowhere near knowing what the cost just to build one of these greenhouses is. We have a rough estimate based. I'm sorry?
The interest in taxes should have been included.
As the delegation goes forth, the subcommittee, the executive committee, and the full delegation, all of that is going to have to be ready and prepared and relevant. It's all going to be considered. Okay.
Any one of these choices is going to have, debt payments and all of that. These are comparative numbers. We're upsizing. Maybe you were ready for an absolute number that says exactly this is what it's going to cost. And what would we decide? To do nothing? So we're going to do something, and it's going to cost the same, but we don't know what that necessarily is.
The only time we're going to know it is when we go out to bid and the bid comes back.
Yeah, at some point we'll really know what these numbers are.
If we go to bid.
So,
further discussion, comments from the public, because I'm adverse to the delegation, but we'll get there. And the rest. Second time?
Second time. This is just a clarification. I'm confused about this meeting. I mean, is it for us to get information from you, for you to register information from us?
Yes.
How, well, What is your
We're supposed to get
perception of what
information from
you've
you.
heard? I'm confused. I mean, there are some people haven't spoken at all. Some people, I mean, is it like, do you want to take a vote? Do you want to just kind of eyeball it? I mean,
We're looking to get
how
information
are
from you. No, it's not a voting scenario.
Okay, well, then my information is I'd like to see it in a more central location, and I would like to think of the individuals involved, i.e. the residents, before other things. And we've heard from a number of experts that the greenhouse is positive for people's health and longevity. That says it all to me. And I will say one more thing. This is a second kind of situation I've been in because I come from Marlborough and we went through this whole thing with the Marlborough School. Now, the Marlborough School had mold and mildew and it was making people sick. And so the town decided to move because trying to figure out, as this lady that has left said, trying to figure out how we were going to do that with the kids in the class was not possible. And we were trying to figure out, okay, can we make the days longer and the amounts shorter? All of that came into play with the school's decision. Didn't work. We went someplace else, built a beautiful school. The school has now been bought. That was not in the conversation at the time, but the school has now been changed into beautiful apartments for low-income people. So if you look hard enough, you can find a solution to what to do, I think, with the building.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Okay, Gladys.
Well, I don't know, I'm Gladys Johnson, and I am a representative from Ward 4 in Keene. And I don't know, is the gentleman still here that thought because we were elected that we weren't? He just left. So if anybody else hears that kind of language, my representatives, there's 400 of us. And most of us, and from Cheshire County, we're not there because we want to play games. We're there because we care about our constituents. I'm a retired teacher. I retired 38 years, K through graduate school. My last retirement was through Keene State. We do this because we want to give back. And anyone thinks that we're doing this to make a big name, you know, that's not the case. So please take
No, they're
that.
doing it for the money, Gladys.
The money of $100 a year, yes.
Prestige.
Just wanted to put that out there. I wish he was here to hear it.
Jim.
My name is Jim O'Connell. I represent Swansea Ocean. To your comments, it's worth pointing out that the subcommittee has decided that the population that we are attempting to take care of are the 150 medically neediest people in the county. And as the silver tsunami hits, all these numbers are going to be this and then some. So your comment is right on the money as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Tim.
Yeah, Tim Robertson, I represent Ward 3 in Keene. I'd like to correct, I'm against the greenhouse as it is presented by the greenhouse people. I believe what they do with the residents is absolutely the best way to go. If you go up to Coas County, they have built their nursing home, and I forget how many people, but they have divided it into units of 25. Each one has their own central room, each one has their own staff, each one has their own place to have dinner. But I think what I saw that didn't like about the greenhouse, separate buildings, you know, it's a rainy day, thunder and lightning, or snow, or whatever, you're not going to go back
and arguing with them.
It is. Back and forth between the buildings, and I think that's a disadvantage. What else was it? Oh, and the difference between us, Maplewood, and the other nursing homes in Keene is all the nursing homes in Keene and in Cheshire County, except ours, answer to whether they're making a profit. Ours is answering to how are we serving the citizens of this area. And that's why our staff is more happy, because they're not saying, you stupid idiot, you gave the man 2 meals and he only should pay for 1. You know, they are taking care of the people to keep them happy. And I think most of the staff would probably come with if we moved it to Keene, and the rest would be people just like the present staff. And one of the reasons they would is because of the fantastic lady we have running the place. She is always the boss that makes your employees happy, happiest, happier, or not happy. And that's what we would be bringing to Keene if we bring it to Keene.
Cheryl, thanks for that compliment. Any further discussion? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attentiveness, thank you for spending the time, and thank you for your input.